welcome back to the Applied Leadership Podcast. My name's Blaine. This is my partner, Brandon, and we're here to talk about stuff that's on your mind. We're answering questions from you and from our colleagues about, life and management and all things leadership, and it's a fun conversation between Brandon and I, and we seldom have any answers, but we enjoy wrestling with these questions, and we're happy to kind of do it out here in the open. So we've got an interesting one this week. I think I know where it comes from. Brandon and I have this sort of routine when we go on the road to be with clients and partners. We usually get in the night before, we have dinner, we try to get to bed early. We always get up early the morning of the engagement, and we get into the gym or we go for a run. We do some sort of workout every morning, even if we have to get up super early. And it's just kind of part of our routine. And occasionally people will come up to us and comment on it. They'll say, I saw you guys in the elevator coming back from the gym, or I saw you guys down in the gym getting some work in this morning. And we usually say something, like, well, just trying to do our best, just trying to keep up, But it is a part of who we are, and we think it contributes to sort of our performance on site and over the long term. But I think what we want to talk about here is how it's beginning to look different as time goes on. And we will occasionally have people ask us, like, what do you guys do? What are you doing for a workout? Like, what kind of program are you on? And it's definitely changing over time. And it's really, I think, for us, much more now about kind of keeping up than it is, getting some sort of high performance output, or elite level of fitness. But to be honest, Brandon, this is something we've wrestled with a lot over the years. We've talked a little bit about privately. My guess is that there's some carryover into our work life as well. And so I'll send it over to you here. When you think about, performance and longevity or sustainability, how are you thinking about that? We can start off with fitness or whatever, and then maybe it'll bleed over.
Yeah. Well, I think to start off with, I think there's different levels of performance. And I think that we have operated at very elite and demanding levels of performance. And I think that as we have gotten older, this is something that we talk about quite frequently. There seems to be, for me, far more gray in the beard than what was there before, which I still am not super sure about it, but I think red would be the right way to call it.
Embrace it. Embrace the ginger. It's okay.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Who knew? I think starting off just acknowledging that there's different levels of performance, right? Like I remember days back in the days of the 30-mile road march, back in the days when I could run, a 2-mile in 10:05, which was my best PR, in the Army. I used to be very fast. And I think that over time, you start to recognize your body's limitations, but also your mind's limitations. And maybe not even limitations is the right word, but trade-offs. We talk about trade-offs all the time here. And I could just say that one of the things that I distinctly remember was changing from a performance to a wellness mindset, because my performance mindset was pegged to, playing at 11, as Spinal Tap would say.
Maximal. Everything maximal.
Play at 11. Everything maximal. No, but see, this plays at 11, right? And so, the knob may go to 10, but I play at 11. And honestly, it was beginning to affect my sustainability, because I was seeing a lot of diminished returns, a lot of injuries, and frankly, there's a mindset that comes with operating at an elite level, when it comes to fitness or anything else. But I'm really talking about fitness. And I respect the fact that, I still perform, and I still perform at a high level or an adequate level. So I want to be just careful that I removed the word performance and said I traded it off for a wellness mindset. I do still perform, but I think that what I've learned is that I'm trying to prioritize wellness, understanding that, I can continue to rock it till the wheels fall off. I most certainly can.
And they'll fall off.
and they will fall off, but I think that it's important to, we are mind, body, soulless creatures, and it's important to acknowledge what that was doing to my mental, and my spiritual levels, because while I was smashing it physically, I was very diminished from a mental and a spiritual perspective, because I frankly I was injuring myself. I was hurting myself. Keep going at that pace, right? Keep going at the pace that I was expected to go at as a ranger for nearly a decade. And look, you get locked into that mindset, and I don't begrudge it or poo-poo it in any way. I think as we begin this conversation, I am just sharing what we have both learned and know to be true, is that works in a certain setting for a certain purpose, such as being at the tip of the spear of our nation's, wars and policies and things like that. Doesn't necessarily work so well for being a father, a husband, a member of your community, for bringing a posture of peace into the home, for being a sustainable business leader, all of those kind of things. I would start it as that, which is, I think it's valuable to share. Look, there is a specific point in time for me, and it actually happened at a specific event where I made the decision that I don't actually have to keep running at this pace, and I probably shouldn't.
Yeah. So the word you mentioned there that really spiked it for me is purpose. We say all the time internally, you and I, with regard to our business, for who, for what, right? We decided a long time ago that we were going to ask those two questions before we made a decision to do anything, or certainly if we were wrestling with a decision to do something, right? Who's it for? What's it for? And if we can't clearly articulate that, then, we might be, stepping into some bad territory. And, to be really honest with you, with regard to physical performance, I know intellectually everything that you just said makes sense. And I've seen it in my own life, and I still struggle mightily on a daily basis almost to let go of a performance metric that I think I should still be able to hit just because I could at some arbitrary point in my past. If you want to talk about, squat, deadlift numbers, 2,000 meter row times, 5K running times, you name it, Fran time, like I know what those numbers are for me, like my all-time PRs. And when I go into the gym working out by myself at 6 a.m. with no one around, with no consequences, if one of those kind of benchmark workouts comes up, that number gets drilled right into my head, and I feel like I'm a total piece of garbage if I still can't hit whatever that mark was. I really struggle with it. And one of the ways that I've tried to be better about it is reminding myself, who am I doing this for? What am I doing this for? And so if we're talking about staying in shape, there's no purpose for me to be the most elite, physical athlete of all time. Like I want to be, because I'm as vain as the next person, right? And I want to achieve at a really high level. But there's a certain level of strong for me that's more than adequate. There's a certain level of fast, a certain level of endurance that's more than adequate for me to be really good at all the things I need to be doing in my life now. And trying to maximize something that isn't really closely tied to a true purpose in my life anymore is likely going to be taking away from something that is important, whether that's me being injured or being grumpy or too tired or just focusing way too much of my time on things that don't really deserve that much of my attention anymore. So trying to be smart about it and thinking about what is the purpose of me doing this has helped out tremendously. And so when I say, look, I want to have all the energy for my kids, I want to have all the energy for our clients when we're on the road, I want to be able to show up for my family at 5 p.m. when I close my laptop and I'm at dinner. Yeah, okay, so I need to be in shape so I can snowboard with my teenagers. I need to be in shape so I can, wrestle on the ground with my nephews. I need to be well so that I can take on a hard day's worth of work or red eye or a road trip and be able to shake it off and be there for my family. So yeah, maybe I do need to be an elite performer in some domains, but like how fit, how strong, do I need to be in order to be that guy? It probably looks a lot different. It's a very different cocktail of training and of performance for me to be well and even to be elite, perhaps, than it did in the past. And if I get caught up in these vanity metrics that, my 27-year-old self, initially established, I can get wayward pretty darn quickly.
Yeah, that the mission focus, the word that came to mind for me listening to that, especially as you note factors like, look, I gotta be fit enough, to get on the snowboard, with my teenagers. The word that comes to mind for me is legacy.
Oh boy, that's a big word. I didn't know we were going there today.
Yeah, I know. I didn't either. I mean, geez, here we go. But and let me qualify that. So when I think about legacy here, so it's really interesting to me because I don't really listen to sportscasters much anymore, primarily because it's like I have said, I've shared this, I know, with you a number of times, like I cannot passively watch a San Jose Sharks game. So by virtue of that, I don't watch San Jose Sharks games very often anymore, which, like I got too angry, right? And so when I think about, which actually, just a short tangent here, you mentioned like for who and for what. Well, I probably shouldn't watch those games because it just pisses me off and I get grumpy and then I'm just a terrible person to be around. So now I've completely removed myself from my family and my quality time because I'm like a raging jerk or just like a total grumpus. Not really worth it.
And you
right?
didn't help the Sharks at all, by the way.
And I didn't help the Sharks at all. They don't know who I am. They don't care, right? Exactly. So, but I think about legacy and when I brought up the sportscasters thing because it's like they always talk about, well, what's his legacy going to be, and what's, when you think about like, what's their legacy going to be? And I don't know, like, I guess you're just a better person than me if you're thinking about what's my legacy going to be, as it relates to how are people going to remember me as opposed to just doing do the work, execute, go out, compete, win, fight, all of that stuff the best that you can and let the chips fall as they may because you truly cannot control the outcome. You can control your effort, but you cannot control the outcome. I'm not so sure that a whole lot of people are actually sitting there, on the other side of the equation, the guys that are lacing up the cleats and the guys that are, hitting the pads every day. I don't know that they're wondering, what's my legacy going to be? Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. I really don't know. But I kind of tend to suspect that they're actually just focused on doing their job, like the classic New England Patriots, do your job, hit the block, run your route, like take the shot, all of these kind of things. And so when I think about, though, mission, purpose, legacy, for who and for what, all of these things, well, I have deprioritized my need to operate at an elite level. I know all of my PRs and, I know all that kind of stuff. It's not that I don't know that. It's not that I don't know what I can do. It's just not that important to me right now. Because what's more important to me is staying well, staying healthy, building resilience into my system by being in the gym 6 days a week, doing the work that I need to do for that, because I know that it actually does help optimize my focus, which is the legacy that I'm building every interaction that I have with my 2 adult children who are out of the house. Because if I don't have margin, because whether it's I've just gassed myself out, or because I gassed myself out and I couldn't hit the PR that I hit still when I was 26, and now not only am I gassed, but I'm pissed, I'm grumpy, right? It's not doing any good. Whereas, when I can look at it for me, and I will tell you for me, like a big part of my fitness for me, why I do 6 workouts a week, is because I know I need to. I know that it helps me regulate my my body. It helps me regulate my system. It helps me regulate my nervous system. It helps me gain mental clarity. It helps build margin for me so that I can deal with the bumps and bruises. Maybe that one of my adult children's, has a situation going on that frustrates me, or maybe it's I'm in traffic and I'm just like, why in the world are we stopping right now? Whatever it is. Or, as you mentioned, because I know that I'm a better leader, I'm a better person, I'm a better version of myself for our partners that we, get to serve every day, if I have that kind of clarity. And so the mission, the focus has changed, because frankly, I don't need to be, the guy who can walk 30 miles to an objective and be, fresh. Oh, and by the way, aggressive enough to kick indoors and do what I got to do on target. I don't need to do that. My target is in my environment all day, every day right now.
Yeah, for sure. That shift of mission and maintaining focus on what it is you're actually trying to accomplish is a big part of it. I would say the other maybe side of that coin, or an extension of that perhaps for me, is learning to make peace with the nature of my mission, period. I think I'll throw this even back into the professional context. When I think about, what I was doing or what you and I were doing in 13, 14, 15 in kind of team RWB with 8 or 9 employees kind of thing. I mean, the number of flights I was on, the number of hotel rooms I stayed in every year, answering emails late at night. I mean, that was a very high stress, high performance environment, because we were trying to do something special. We had a little bit of lightning in a bottle. We could all sense that we had an opportunity to capitalize on this thing that we all felt so connected to, and we all knew was so important for the kind of the larger whole, that, I was able to do that and run pretty hard for like 5 years, in that kind of startup mode, and doing whatever we had to do, saying yes to everything, every interview, every conference, and over time, we got a little better about it. Luckily, because we had such a good team, we could kind of spread the work out a bit. But it always seemed like there was just more work. The more we spread it out, the more opportunities we got and the more work there was. And I was willing to do that at the time, even though I had 2 young kids and a lot going on, because for whatever reason, it was my decision. That mission felt like it warranted that level of effort at that time and that much focus on my professional life. And so I used to tell people all the time that I can only have 3 priorities. One of them is Team RWB. One of them is my 2 sons. And one of them is making sure that I'm sane, which basically looked like, CrossFit and paddleboarding for the most part, right? And that was all I could do. I had a pretty boring life outside of that. And I think about our lives now. You and I talk about this a lot. Like there are days when I'm at dinner and I wonder, like, did I do enough today? Like, did I have too much fun today? Did I, take too many liberties with my schedule and like catch that workout in the middle of the day and run down to Lowe's to get that thing? And I realize we're very fortunate to be in the position we've been in. And I will also acknowledge that we've worked very hard to be in the position that we're in. But truth be told, there are a lot of moments where you and I surge to get things done, to write that chapter or do that engagement. But there's a lot of times when we, a lot of days we're not working that hard. We do the mountain bike ride in the middle of the day or the workout and lunch with our wives. And we're in our 4th year now, and it's still kind of the same thing. And I don't want to speak for you, but I'll tell you, I've had a lot of, conversations with myself around, like, should I be on the gas more? Should we be growing this thing more quickly? Do we owe this person a little bit more than we're giving them? And I'm mostly at peace with sort of this more sustainable path now, partly, I'll admit, because I think it's going to just yield even better results further down the line if we just let it compound. But it's been hard. It's been a real mental trick for me to settle in to a more moderate pace, I think, of work than I think either you or I have ever been accustomed to.
Yeah. Yeah, I would go so far as to almost reframe from moderate to deliberate pace. I feel like we have embraced a bit of a operating in a deliberate space, right? Or a deliberate pace. And I think that there's something that you just said that really reminded me of the importance of wellness and of a wellness mindset, of investing in your physical fitness, investing in your mental health, investing in your spiritual health, which is, we will always have moments where we are required to surge. But if you have no capacity for surging, that's going to become very problematic. In every industry, whether you're in manufacturing or healthcare or sales, nonprofit, we could go on, there are always reasons and moments where you will have to surge. That important project that comes up, that deadline that you have to hit, the opportunity, that requires you to stop everything and get on a plane and head out to Portland so that you can drive to Beaverton and take that meeting and see what happens, right? Well, if you have no capacity built in, if you have no resilience in your mental, your physical, your emotional, your spiritual, that by definition will kill your ability to be effective over the long haul and to be, sustainable. Blaine, you mentioned, you kind of like opening up a window here into our lives, which is a great deal of what this podcast is all about, is just to kind of open up a little bit of a window. And, we have two awesome families. We have worked very hard and sacrificed an awful lot to ensure that we have families that we are doing this whole thing together with. Applied leadership partners, life, everything together with, right? And there are times, that come up where, there's trips, like we get opportunities. Hey, you guys are on the road twice a month already. This is now a third and maybe even a fourth. And I would submit that those moments of surge that really require you to go a little bit, orange or even red line at times, not just, in your physical, but in your mental and in your relational with the families. We have acceptable tolerance of that because we have built in on the forefront some of that capacity, because we have, taken the time. Yesterday, I stopped in the middle of the day, drove over to the hospital. Kelly was on break from her shift, and we had lunch. And it's moments like that where I'm becoming more comfortable saying to myself, and yet I know that I was on planes, trains, and automobiles last week to Dallas. I had the opportunity to do that. And before that to Atlanta. And before that, to San Diego and these things, because you can build in that capacity. So I would just submit, you could relate that to fitness if you want. You could relate that to work, to relationships. Point being is that it's all integrated because we are trying to live a whole life. And building in that capacity enables those opportunities to surge, because they're going to happen. If you're doing anything that matters, you're going to have those opportunities that pop, and you're going to have to be willing to surge. And hopefully you've built that capacity in, whether it be physical or relational, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it for the mission, for the long haul.
Well, man, I feel better about all this now, just having heard you say that. So I hope that's helpful to someone else out there, because I already feel better about it. I think that maybe is the most kind of that the point you just made is the strongest case for me personally in my mindset of, look, this is not about capitulation. This is not about giving up on being awesome. My wife Jenny and I talk all the time about, like, don't quit. You turn 40, fine. You turn 45, whatever, fine. Like, we're not quitting. We're not trying to get out of shape. We're not trying to stop taking care of ourselves. We're not trying to stop being cool or pay attention to what's going on in the world. Like, we're not going to quit until we're dead. We're going to stay in the game. And anything to me that even sniffs a little bit of, like, I'm kind of just like quitting, really, really upsets me personally. But what you've just given me there, and I think is a really helpful reframe, which is, we're still trying to perform at a very, very high level, and we're trying to do it for a long time. And when I think about my for who, for what, if doing a really great job and having a really great business, being really good at what we do, doesn't allow you to go have lunch with Kelly when she's on a 12-hour shift, then what the heck are we doing this for in the first place, right? If I can't knock off early on a Friday in the summer in Maine, then like, what am I even doing this for? Because that is what you do here. You know what I mean? So those things have to be incorporated into the mission, I think, as well as putting something thoughtful into the world, serving clients at a very high level, helping businesses and organizations to be better. It's also got to be in service of our families and the life that we're ultimately trying to live here. And I think we've done a nice job of helping each other out maybe over time in doing that, because that's really, really what it's about.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to, I want to take a moment here to acknowledge we are two small business owners. We operate a very small and nimble team, and we operate a boutique consulting agency, leader development organization. And there may be a fair amount of people listening to this podcast right now who don't. Maybe you work in a Fortune 500 company. Maybe you're, somewhere in the middle. Maybe you're a CEO at the top of a very large organization. We respect that. What I want to say is that there are ways to inject these principles, like we always deal with this exceptionalism myth where people say, oh, well, that's great. You can do that, because you guys are running a small business, right? And I have heard you say so many times to those leaders, operating at very high levels in Fortune, 200 companies, some of the top, who said it had to be this way? Who said that you can't take 30 minutes to clear your head in the middle of a day full of meetings and go have lunch with your spouse? Who said you can't go walk, your dog? Who said that you can't take 20 minutes and knock out a wad? Tell me who said that, because from where I sit, it kind of seems like you have the authority to create a culture that respects that building in of some resilience, that respects that sustainability while still getting after it, while still being effective.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we mention this, that, there are ways that we can carve out a little bit of that space, which will only increase effectiveness over the long haul.
That's it there. So to maybe try to put a point on this and start wrapping it up, having a little bit of slack in the system, having that resilience built in is going to be the only thing that allows you to surge when you need it or seize that opportunity that jumps out at you. And we see so many leaders in so many organizations that are hell-bent on maximum efficiency, operating right at the edge of the margin, squeezing every bit of blood out of the turnip as they can. And what they're not seeing is that there is a serious cost to that, not just like to their health or wellness, but to the business, because there are going to be times when something goes terribly wrong and you've got to adjust. And there are going to be times when something pops that's amazingly right and you just don't have the gas to get on it because you're running right on the razor's edge. And that is no way to be. And so that's what I'll take away from this conversation is, whether it's physical training, my relationship to my family, the amount of effort I'm putting into my work, our calendar, you can't be right at the razor's edge because there's going to be a lot of stuff you didn't account for, some good, some bad. And being great in the long run is going to require you to be able to deal with the tough stuff and seize on the good stuff. And if you can't, you're just going to be average at best. And I don't think that's what we're going for.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And my last thought, for the conversation here is I hope that, folks will hold on to those two questions: for who and for what, and who said it had to be this way.
Yeah. All right, man. This was a good one. The time just flew by, at least from my perspective. So thanks for doing it. For those of you listening, if you got questions,
too much fun.
If you got questions, we want to hear them. So send an email to operations@appliedleadershippartners.com. We'll look through all of them. We'll try to get them here on the show. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time.